will be the first to admit I thought these types of cryptids were a joke and not real, and I've never been able to take them seriously. I am an outdoorsman and have been for 35 years. I grew up in the woods. I memorize trees for mushroom hunting for a living. I know every brook, stream, bush, berry grove, log, you name it. I'm on a forest road and I'm on hour 9 of not a soul in sight. I gather some mushrooms and look up the road and see a rock has fallen from the loose, steep side of the mountain to the middle of the road. I make a mental note that I have to move it and not drive over it. I gather my mushrooms and get back to the car. I look up, and I see what appears to be a 2 or 2.5 foot tall little brown thing walking from the side of the road over to the rock. My first logical thought is that it is a squirrel, but I see it is walking on 2 legs, appears to be wearing brown cloth or fur clothes, and is shaped like a human but very tiny. It's not scurrying either, it is ambling on 2 legs like a human would. Just casually walking like this is some normal, regular-ass thing, like monotonous work it does for a living. I don't believe my lying eyes. It has to be something else. I get back in the car and head up the road and see that the rock has been pushed back to the side of the road from whence it came. It had fallen off the hill, rolled to my left, then was sitting back on the other side of the road on the right. There are drag marks like someone slid it back. I look, I smell, I sense, I listen. Nothing. I don't know where gnomes live, but the old partially logged section where I was at looked pretty perfect for a clan of these things. Lots of places to hide, secluded, near water, plenty of routes of escape, and would be easy to dig little holes in the mountain and be fortified against invaders. The side road into it was flooded and appears to do so regularly, so these little guys even have their own moat. I'm positive I'm overthinking this. It was a long drive back up the mountain, then down the mountain the other way, and some time home, and I can't pick this apart into anything else but being a tiny little forest man. I'm like 1000% positive that I saw what I saw. It was near a military special interest zone allegedly blocked off due to some native butterflies, but I'm starting to wonder if this research area is really about butterflies after all. They send you to prison, ban you from parks, and give you a $5,000 fine if you take a single berry from inside that boundary. Hi guys. I used to be a spiritual girly with my own spirit team, just living, loving life and being trippy until I screamed fuck God in the air by myself after having a really bad week. A week later I came down with schizophrenia and it's been quite a ride ever since. I sincerely believe that is what led to me having schizophrenia, and I feel really sorry about that, but I just thought I had a relationship with God that was stronger than just that. I always say sorry after my fits. Why would he punish me like this if he knows I just have bad days sometimes? Nonetheless, it's happened and I don't blame him as much anymore for why I'm schizophrenic. I'm growing and I for the most part love my life, but I'm trying to do what makes me happy, and learning more about Christianity is one of those things for me. But whenever I call on Jesus and God for help when I'm having bad schizophrenic days, and even just praying, the God and Jesus in my head makes fun of me and tells me negative things. How can I try out this giving my life to Christ thing when I get made fun of from these voices? Does anyone relate and can share coping skills? Today I've been trying to bargain with the voice by letting them know that I can't be a good Christian woman while taking their maltreatment. They seem to have listened and actually stopped. Isn't this proof that God sure can listen in on us and put a stop to the bad hallucinations? He's so powerful and the all-knowing but loving God, and even calling his name as a schizophrenic hurts us? This is making me question my faith in God, because why would he allow his people to go through so much evil and suffering if he really did love even us mentally ill people? Why did he punish me with this illness? Is he someone to fear, or can we really trust him? What do you guys think? Everyone says he's the embodiment of love, but I don't think he's that nice. Please help by sharing your stories. I was hanging out with my friend and her 4-year-old son at a park in our hometown. He was taking it all in, then asked to see the goats. There's a small petting zoo, but was definitely out of sight at the time and we hadn't passed it on the way in. My friend had never taken him there before and I don't recall either of us telling him about the petting zoo. We took him to see the animals. My friend asked how he knew about the zoo and he said, "I came here with you. You were young and I was old." My friend's grandfather had taken her there all the time when she was growing up. The stranger thing is that most of my friend's family felt like her son was the reincarnation of the grandfather. He passed many years ago and this really shook my friend to her core. I'm not one to really believe in reincarnation, but I can't find a logical reason that would prompt a 4-year-old to make a comment like that. I once held a hunting lease in Middle Georgia. It was an abandoned hunting camp that hadn't been used in several years. I'm not superstitious at all, but this place was legitimately spooky. It was miles down an overgrown dirt road and completely surrounded by woods. It's probably the most secluded place I've ever been. I used to hunt there by myself a lot and there was always this weird sense that I wasn't alone out there. There was a locked gate at the front of the property, but it was not uncommon for us to find the front door of the cabin open, even when the door was locked. That was pretty creepy, but that's not what this story is about. One evening I was hunting down in a small valley by a food plot we put lining a creek that bordered the property. From the minute I sat down I had a weird feeling. Like I wasn't in a safe place even though I was holding a .308 with ballistic tip rounds. I didn't feel like I was the top predator out there. I didn't see any deer while I was sitting the stand, but the forest was abuzz with activity. Birds, squirrels, and other critters singing their normal evening symphony, and then all of a sudden, silence. Everything just stopped. It felt like everything in the woods were looking right at me. It was getting dark fast anyways and I was extremely creeped out, so I packed up my gear and started the walk back up to the cabin. About 100 yards away I had this feeling that something was coming up behind me. I spun around and pointed my rifle back down the path towards the food plot, and that's when I saw it. There was something standing in the middle of the path. It wasn't a person, but it didn't look like a deer or anything I've seen before. There was hardly any light to make out any features, but it almost looked like some kind of bipedal deer or something. It was just standing there, staring at me. I quickly made my way back to the cabin, packed up my stuff and got out of there. I just let the lease run out. Never went back after that. Things used to happen to me that I can't explain, and I still have trauma from them. I'll try to describe them to you, and I'd be glad if someone who might know what's going on could respond. I lived with my dad, in a house that wasn't pretty to look at. We didn't have much money, so the house was never fixed up. When all my siblings left to live their own lives, I stayed with my dad alone. I was in my sister's room. My sister used to experience paranormal phenomena in that room because our dead brother, who died when I was young, used to visit her. At the time I was in my sister's room, I didn't know about it. Every day around 1 a.m., I heard noises, like someone walking back and forth on all fours. It seemed quite disturbing to me. Then I heard and saw something pushing on the door, but they were closed, so they didn't open. This happened every day, so I started barricading the door with a barrel of wood to make sure it couldn't get inside. This went on every day for about a week. I did an experiment where, before going to bed, I left the light on. Of course, I was barricaded in, so no one could get inside. The next day, I woke up, and the light was off. The barricade was still in place. I should note that I'm not a sleepwalker. When I woke up, I thought the bulb had burned out, but when I tried the switch, the light turned on normally, so someone must have turned it off. Dad couldn't have gotten inside because of the barricade, so it couldn't have been him. Besides, he would have been upset that I left the light on, but he was calm, and the barricade was still intact. Because of these things, I started having sleep paralysis almost every day. Even a normal dream would turn into sleep paralysis, or I would experience it as soon as I was falling asleep. I'll give you an example of one of my episodes of sleep paralysis. I was in a dream where I greeted a friend, and we were about to high-five, but before we could, everything started to ripple and spin. We spoke in a language that sped up, slowed down, or was in reverse, a kind of language that gives you goosebumps. Suddenly, I woke up from the dream and saw the two of us in front of me, continuing to speak in that strange language, and I noticed that our faces were deformed like uncanny valley type of deformed. This lasted about 40 seconds. When all these things were happening, I was scared to go to the bathroom. One time, I went to the bathroom with a flashlight, and we had the bathroom window open. Outside the window was our dog's bed. Whenever he wanted to come to us, he would whine. But at that time of night, it was always this strange whining, almost unnatural, and it would always get closer to the window. I would quickly run back to my room before the whining got too close to the window. Does anyone know what this could be? Why was this happening to me? What kind of entity was doing this? I'm also wondering if the entity somehow influenced the sleep paralysis, making it so frequent, or if something else was living in my room with me. I think it's possible because of the experiment with the light. I would appreciate any comments. I once held a hunting lease in Middle Georgia. It was an abandoned hunting camp that hadn't been used in several years. I'm not superstitious at all, but this place was legitimately spooky. It was miles down an overgrown dirt road and completely surrounded by woods. It's probably the most secluded place I've ever been. I used to hunt there by myself a lot, and there was always this weird sense that I wasn't alone out there. There was a locked gate at the front of the property, but it was not uncommon for us to find the front door of the cabin open, even when the door was locked. That was pretty creepy, but that's not what this story is about. One evening I was hunting down in a small valley by a food plot we put lining a creek that bordered the property. From the minute I sat down I had a weird feeling. Like I wasn't in a safe place, even though I was holding a .308 with ballistic tipped rounds. I didn't feel like I was the top predator out there. I didn't see any deer while I was sitting the stand, but the forest was abuzz with activity. Birds, squirrels, and other critters singing their normal evening symphony, and then all of a sudden, silence. Everything just stopped. It felt like everything in the woods were looking right at me. It was getting dark fast anyways, and I was extremely creeped out, so I packed up my gear and started the walk back up to the cabin. About 100 yards away I had this feeling that something was coming up behind me. I spun around and pointed my rifle back down the path towards the food plot, and that's when I saw it. There was something standing in the middle of the path. It wasn't a person, but it didn't look like a deer or anything I've seen before. There was hardly any light to make out any features, but it almost looked like some kind of bipedal deer or something. It was just standing there, staring at me. I quickly made my way back to the cabin, packed up my stuff and got out of there. I just let the lease run out. Never went back after that. I'm 19 years old, and February 2024 I became homeless and been bouncing from house to house. The first place I stayed at is with a friend at the time, let's call her Leah. I'm going to give her a little backstory to understand how she is. She has a drinking problem even though she is only 18 years old and 7 months after we graduated high school. She had gotten a felony and other charges because she was caught drinking and driving and had other substances in the car with her. When I got kicked out, I had this massive fight with my mom, and I chose to actually leave because I feared I would never be able to leave her household and for my own personal safety if I ever went back. So, this one night we were in Leah's room just talking, and I wasn't trying to think about what had happened between me and my mom. Leah asked if I wanted to smoke some bud and drink with her, so Elle decided why not. We smoked a blunt and we were talking about personality disorders, and I didn't know why she knew so much about it, and she eventually told me she had a personality disorder. And she randomly switches to different mindsets where she acts completely different, and I kind of noticed it about her when we would hang out at my mom's house. First, she'd be all energetic and happy, and the next she would act completely different where she would get mad and depressed and just want to drink. Back to the conversation we were having, she just gets dead serious and looks me in the eye saying, "I know you know," when I switch, and my heart just dropped because the look in her eyes, they weren't the normal brown she usually has. They were a dark black, and I kind of got scared at her statement, and I played it off saying yes sometimes, but I don't really notice. And she's like glaring at me, and she gets silent for a bit and acts normal after that and continues the conversation like nothing happened. Then she tells me about the time where she played the Ouija board with her friend, and they were in her friend's house which they were renovating, so they play the game when it's dark outside, and they had been drinking before they played the Ouija board. And I'm Native American, and I always been told not to be outside when it's dark, and when you're drinking, spirits could potentially see you and start following you around. So, she tells me that they had a whole setup with candles and everything and made sure no one was there, and start asking questions, and of course the planchette starts moving, and her friend asks if it's her dead grandmother talking to them, and it moves to yes. And her friend gets emotional and starts crying because she can hear a voice, but it definitely does not sound like an old woman. She tells me it sounded like an angry man, and her friend argues with her saying it's her grandmother telling her she loves her and watches over her. And Leah actually gets freaked out because this voice she hears is an angry man telling her to get out of the house, and she looks around and she sees a black figure crouching in the corner just staring at them. So, she cuts the game short and tells me she was so freaked out she never said goodbye, and some days had passed and she found herself home with her dad and brother, and her room at the time was in the basement. She tells me she was in her room getting ready for school, and she hears someone just randomly say her name clear as day, and she goes upstairs and asks what her dad needed her for, and he tells her that he never said her name, so she asks her brother what he needed, and he also says he never called her name either, and they all get confused because she tells them she heard someone say her name. Another day passes and she's sleeping in her room, and she wakes up and looks around because she can feel someone staring at her, and she looks in the corner of her room and she sees the shadow man, as she calls it, just up in the corner sitting like how Spider-Man clings to the wall. She said after that she never slept in her room until she moved in with her grandmother. She just stops the story there, and I was feeling a little freaked out after that story, and for the month I was staying with her I was having nightmares about my family dying every night, but also, she had this huge mirror in her room where it was like 7 feet long and 5 foot wide, and her room small, so I slept on the floor in front of it. Call me superstitious, but I don't like mirrors facing towards you when you sleep, because I fully believe at night mirror portals open and whatever is on the other side can see you. And things ended bad between us because she had her mom come at me all mad telling me I was saying all these things about Leah I never said. I remember Leah telling me she hears voices, so whatever is attached to her must have said things to her, and she's believed whatever it said. I'm still mad that she wanted to end things that way and hope I never see her again. But I'm doing good now. I'm on good terms with my mom again, and I just moved into my own apartment in July and have a job that has good pay, so that's all that matters. Not sure what it was. I was a little kid when I saw it. I was playing in my parents' bedroom during the evening until I saw the shape of a human head outside the window. It did not have eyes, mouth, or nose, just a blank head with a really pale skin. As I've screamed, my dad went to see if there was someone outside but found nothing. I know it sounds a lot like that Slenderman bullshit, but that happened around the year 2002, so it was a long time before the meme was created. My mom says it was a ghost. I grew up believing it was a gray. I turned out to be one of those kids obsessed on aliens a few years later. It was impossible to be a person. The house had a big wall surrounding it, which is kamam here in Brazil, and our dog would bark if someone was around. Do you know of something that looks like that? Have you seen something like it? Sorry for my bad English, it's not my main language. I'm sorry if this is long or difficult to follow. I saw this sub mentioned in the comments on a post in another sub. When I came here, I read some of the stories and descriptions of crawlers that have been posted, and now I'm wondering if that may have been what I saw about 10 years ago. I was hanging out with my best friend when she was living with her parents out in a rural community in Victoria County, Texas. She and her dad had told me some stories in the past of odd occurrences in the neighborhood, but I hadn't actually seen anything in their area myself. I will say I have seen and heard plenty of strange things happen in and around Victoria County as well as nearby counties. But never this. That particular night, my friend and I were bored, and decided to go into town to hit up a bar. To describe her neighborhood, picture one main road that makes a big loop all the way from one section of a highway to another section of the same highway. Off one side of this road was a very large cornfield and a couple farmhouses, and off the other side were the two long main roads of my friend's neighborhood. Those two main roads had one short road connecting them about halfway down, then another short road going between them again at the very end. Almost like a boxy digital 8, but the top line keeps going in both directions. She lived at the very end of one of the longer roads. We got into her car, and we started driving up her road. She began telling me some story or some gossip from work, I don't remember, the topic of conversation isn't important, just that she was talking at the time. I'm sort of half listening and staring blankly out through the windshield. We had gotten to just about, or maybe a little past the halfway point, when I saw her headlights illuminate this thing walking across her road up where it ends at the main road that connects to the highway. It was very tall, impossibly skinny, pale and grayish. For reference of how it moved, picture or look up that scene from Signs when they showed the birthday party footage on the news, but it was a little faster, more fluid, and the arms and legs were longer. I got instant chills as it passed in front of us. I thought maybe I was imagining things, but just as I told myself that, I heard my friend say, "What the fuck was that?" and realized she had stopped telling her story, and that she had brought her car to a full stop as well. She stepped on the gas and we got up to the main road as fast as we could, but when we got up there, neither of us could see anything in either direction, as it was too dark with no street light, and her headlights only showed the crop in front of us. We were both a little shaken up, and ended up not trying to pursue it, and just sticking to the plan and heading to town. But I remember being terrified leaving her house later to go home. Neither of us ever saw it again. I haven't heard any stories since about similar sightings in my area. I don't know what I thought it was at the time, I didn't have a word for it. But now that I've found this sub, I'm wondering if it may have been a crawler.
Tunnel snakes rule. We're the tunnel snakes. That's us. And we rule. Tunnel snakes rule. We're the tunnel snakes.
Want to share your paranormal experiences? Do you have questions, complaints, ideas for a show topic or a hate-filled rant? Send all your messages to our email for live reading on our show. Email us at atomicshamanSweatlodge@protonmail.com. Like, share, subscribe and be sure to check the notification bell. Follow the Atomic Shaman on Twitter at Motel and RV Park. Listen to Paranormal Green Text Stories on Atomic Shaman TTS on YouTube. Catch the live streams of Atomic Shaman Sweat Lodge only on Rumble.